When you think of ice cream, there's one name that stands out above the rest: Ben & Jerry's. It's not just the delicious, creamy texture or the wild, fun flavors that keep people coming back for more. It's the brand's commitment to quality, creativity, and social responsibility. But have you ever wondered how the magic happens behind the scenes? How do those quirky flavors like Cherry Garcia and fish food come together in that iconic pint? In today's video, we're taking you on a sweet journey through the history and the step-by-step process of how Ben & Jerry's ice cream is made in their factory. The story of Ben & Jerry's begins in 1978 in a small town called Burlington, Vermont. Two childhood friends, Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield, decided to take a leap of faith and start their own ice cream business. The pair originally thought about opening a bagel shop, but when they realized the cost of equipment, they pivoted and took a $5 correspondence course on ice cream making. With an initial investment of just $12,000, a combination of their own savings and a loan from Ben's father, the two friends opened their first scoop shop in an old gas station in downtown Burlington. Their mission was simple: to create the creamiest, most flavorful ice cream imaginable. In those early days, they handcrafted each batch of ice cream using just a few basic ingredients: cream, milk, sugar, and a healthy dose of creativity. The business quickly gained a loyal following, and in 1980, they began packaging their ice cream for grocery stores, changing the way people enjoyed frozen treats. From Chunky Monkey to Americone Dream, their pints have become a global sensation. But how does all this creamy goodness actually come to life in the factory? Let's find out. First up, it all starts with the base of the ice cream, the dairy. Ben & Jerry's prides itself on using high-quality, responsibly sourced ingredients. They work with family farms in Vermont and nearby regions to ensure the milk and cream used are top-notch. The process begins with blending the milk and cream in large mixers called mix tanks. The proportions of milk, cream, and other ingredients are carefully calculated to ensure each batch is perfect. The key to a rich and indulgent Ben & Jerry's flavor is the balance of dairy and sugar, which is added in the right amounts to create that signature smooth texture. Next, the mixture is pasteurized. This means it's heated to a high temperature to kill any harmful bacteria, ensuring that the ice cream is safe to eat. This also helps break down the fat in the cream so it can blend more evenly, creating that rich, creamy consistency we all love. Pasteurization also plays a role in the flavor. The higher temperatures allow the sugars and dairy fats to caramelize slightly, enhancing the base flavor of the ice cream. After that, the mixture is rapidly cooled to around 40 degrees Fahrenheit to prepare for the next steps. The dairy base is blended with vanilla or chocolate, or whatever the core flavor of the ice cream is. For example, when making Chocolate Fudge Brownie, a rich cocoa powder and chocolate syrup are added to the mix. It's all about balancing the right flavors to create the perfect foundation. Ben & Jerry's doesn't stop at just the flavor base. This is where the real fun begins: the mix-ins. You can't have a pint of Ben & Jerry's without those decadent chunks and swirls. Cookie dough, fudge brownie bits, caramel swirls, and so much more get added at this stage. The key here is the size and distribution of the mix-ins. Ben & Jerry's is known for packing in generous chunks, so every spoonful is a perfect bite. Once everything is blended together, the ice cream mixture is ready for freezing. But it's not just put into a freezer and left to freeze. Instead, the ice cream is transferred into machines called batch freezers. These machines churn the ice cream while freezing it, which is essential to achieving that smooth, creamy texture. Churning while freezing helps create tiny air bubbles in the ice cream, which gives it that signature light, airy texture. This process is called overrun, and Ben & Jerry's carefully controls how much air is whipped into the ice cream to make sure it's just the right amount. Not too dense, not too fluffy. Now that the ice cream is perfectly frozen and churned, it's ready to be packaged. But this part isn't as simple as it sounds. Ben & Jerry's takes great care in how the ice cream is packed into pints. Each pint is filled to exactly the right level, and the ice cream is smoothed out so it stays fresh and looks great on the shelf. Here's where the magic happens: the swirls and chunks. Ben & Jerry's doesn't just mix the chunks into the ice cream base. They swirl them in at the end to give you that perfect bite every time. Once the pints are filled and the mix-ins are added, The pints are sealed with a lid and sent down the production line. But the journey's not over yet. The pints now go into a deep freeze to harden up and reach the ideal temperature for scooping. The ice cream spends several hours in a blast freezer, which cools it down rapidly. This helps it retain that smooth texture and prevents the formation of ice crystals, which could affect the creaminess. After that, it's stored at a consistent freezing temperature until it's ready to be shipped out to grocery stores and ice cream lovers around the world. From Vermont to your local grocery store, it's a journey that starts with fresh, local ingredients and ends with you enjoying a delicious pint of ice cream. And that's how Ben & Jerry's ice cream is made, from farm to freezer to your home. It's a process that takes precision, passion, and a lot of care to create the perfect pint. And of course, it's all about fun flavors, creative mix-ins, and a whole lot of love. Hey there, syrup lovers! Did you know that the maple syrup industry in North America produces around 3.5 million gallons of syrup every year? That's a lot of maple goodness. But here's the thing. Making that syrup is no easy feat. It takes a precise combination of nature, tradition, and technology to create that golden, sweet liquid we all know and love. So, how exactly is maple syrup made? Well, let's take a deep dive into the process. But before we jump in, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more sweet content. Let's begin where all the magic starts, tapping the trees. In early spring, when the temperatures start to fluctuate between freezing nights and warm days, the sap in sugar maple trees begins to flow. But how do we get that sap out? Well, we need to tap the trees. Tapping is done by drilling a small hole in the tree trunk and inserting a metal spout called a tap. These taps are usually connected to buckets or modern tubing systems that run between trees to collect the sap. The sap is mostly water, with just a little bit of sugar in it, about 2 to 3%. And it takes a lot of sap to make just 1 gallon of syrup. In fact, it takes about 40 gallons of sap to make just 1 gallon of pure maple syrup. After the trees are tapped, the sap begins to flow. But how does it get from the trees to the sugar shack where the real magic happens? Well, nature does most of the work here. The freezing nights and warming days cause pressure changes inside the tree that make the sap rise up through the trunk and flow out of the tap. This process can last for a few weeks during the early spring when the conditions are just right. The sap flows best on days when the temperature is above freezing but the nights are still cold. This temperature fluctuation causes pressure to build up inside the tree, forcing the sap out. Once the sap has been collected, it's time to move it to the next stage, harvesting the sap. In a traditional maple syrup operation, this involves gathering buckets filled with sap and transporting them to a storage tank. In more modern systems, tubing is used to transport the sap directly to a central location. Once the sap is in the tank, it's ready for the next big step, concentrating. Fresh maple sap is mostly water and it takes a lot of sap to make syrup. So before we can start boiling, we need to concentrate that sap to save time and energy. Enter reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis is a process where the sap is filtered through membranes that separate the water from the sugar. By pushing the sap through these special filters under pressure, we can remove a lot of water content before it even hits the evaporator. This makes the next step, evaporation, much faster and more energy efficient. This saves a lot of time and wood, which is good for the environment and for the syrup maker's bottom line. Now we're getting to the good stuff, evaporation. After reverse osmosis has done its job, we take the concentrated sap and boil it down in a giant evaporator. The evaporator is an industrial-sized pan that sits over a fire or a propane burner. The goal here is simple: get rid of as much water as possible until the sap becomes thick enough to be syrup. As the sap boils, it changes. The water evaporates and the syrup slowly starts to take shape, changing color and becoming more concentrated. This is a delicate process because we need to boil the sap to exactly the right consistency and temperature. The syrup is done when it reaches about 219 degrees Fahrenheit, 104 degrees Celsius. At that point, the sap has reached about 66% sugar content, and the liquid is thick enough to be considered syrup. But boiling it to the right temperature isn't just about making syrup. It also brings out the flavor. That's where the Maillard reaction comes into play. This is a process that happens when sugars and amino acids in the sap react together under heat. It's what gives syrup its rich, complex flavor and its darker color. As the sap boils, the sugars in the sap break down and caramelize, creating those delicious caramel and butterscotch flavors we love. The longer the sap boils, the darker and richer the syrup becomes, which is why late-season syrup has that bold, robust flavor. So, next time you pour syrup over your pancakes, you can thank the Maillard reaction for all that deep, caramel goodness. After the syrup is ready, it's filtered one last time to remove any final impurities. And then it's poured into bottles or jars. From here, it's ready to be labeled, packaged, and shipped out to stores all over the world. And that's it. From tree to table, the journey of maple syrup is a sweet one that requires precision, skill, and a little bit of magic from both nature and technology. Imagine the sun-kissed fields where vibrant raspberries ripen, their sweet, tangy scent filling the air. Now, picture that fresh fruit transforming into the delicious spread we all know and love: raspberry jam. In today's video, we're going to walk you through the fascinating process of how raspberry jam is made in a factory. From the moment the berries are plucked from the vine to when that jar is sealed and ready to ship, we'll explore every step of the journey. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more behind the scenes of how everyday foods are made. Before we dive into the factory, let's talk about where the jam making begins. Raspberries are a delicate fruit, requiring specific conditions to thrive. They grow best in cooler climates with long, mild summers and well-drained soil. Regions like Oregon in the US and the United Kingdom are famous for their high-quality raspberries. Here they flourish, soaking in the sun and rain to produce plump, juicy berries perfect for jam making. Raspberry bushes are carefully tended to throughout the growing season, ensuring the best possible fruit. Unlike some fruits, raspberries are fragile, and they need to be picked by hand. Workers in the fields must be quick but delicate, making sure not to bruise the fruit as they harvest it. The best raspberries are those that are fully ripe, plump, and have the deep red color that signals peak sweetness. Once picked, they are carefully placed into baskets or crates, ready for transport to the processing facility. Once the raspberries arrive at the factory, they are unloaded and sent through an initial sorting process. This step is crucial, as only the highest quality raspberries are used for making jam. The berries are sorted to remove any that are overripe, underripe, or damaged. Some factories use machines with advanced technology to separate out impurities, while others still rely on manual labor for quality control. Next, the raspberries are carefully washed to remove any dirt, debris, or pesticides. They are placed in large washing tanks where gentle jets of water ensure that each berry is thoroughly cleaned without being damaged. It's vital that the berries stay intact during this process, as their shape and texture will affect the final product. Once cleaned, the raspberries are ready for the next step: crushing. In most modern factories, the berries are passed through a crusher or pulper. This machine gently breaks down the fruit into a puree, which will be the base of our jam. The pulp is collected and transferred into large cooking kettles. Here, the raspberry puree is combined with sugar, which helps preserve the fruit and gives the jam its signature sweetness. The amount of sugar varies based on the desired sweetness and consistency of the final product, but a typical ratio is around 60% fruit and 40% sugar. As the mixture begins to cook, it's carefully monitored to prevent burning or overcooking. The cooking process can take anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, depending on the scale of production and the type of equipment being used. During this time, the pectin in the raspberries is released, helping the jam thicken and take on that perfect spreadable texture. Temperature control is critical at this stage. The jam must reach a precise temperature, typically around 220 degrees Fahrenheit, 104 degrees Celsius, to ensure it sets correctly. Some factories use advanced technology to measure the temperature and consistency, while others rely on the spoon test, a simple method where a small amount of jam is placed on a spoon and allowed to cool to see if it has the right thickness. Once the jam has reached the perfect consistency, it's time for jarring. The hot jam is carefully poured into sterilized jars. In large factories, this process is automated, with machines that fill and seal hundreds of jars every minute. However, quality control remains essential at this stage. Each jar is inspected for any air bubbles or imperfections in the seal, ensuring that the jam remains fresh for as long as possible. Once filled, the jars are sealed with tight-fitting lids to prevent any air from entering. Some factories use vacuum sealing techniques, where air is drawn out of the jar before sealing to prolong the shelf life of the jam. To ensure that the jam is safe to eat and has a long shelf life, it's pasteurized. This means the sealed jars are heated to a specific temperature for a set amount of time to kill any harmful bacteria or microorganisms. Pasteurization also helps preserve the color, flavor, and nutrients of the jam. After pasteurization, the jars are moved to a cooling station, where they are allowed to cool down gradually. Once cooled, the jars are transferred to the labeling station. Here, each jar is carefully labeled with its product name, ingredients, expiration date, and branding. The labeling process is typically automated in large factories, but the design and placement of the labels are carefully monitored for accuracy. Finally, the jars of jam are packed into cartons, ready to be shipped out to distributors, stores, and directly to customers. The packaging ensures that the jam stays secure and intact during its journey from the factory to your local grocery store. After all the hard work and care put into the production process, your jar of raspberry jam finally makes its way to your home. Whether it's for a morning breakfast spread, a sweet addition to desserts, or an ingredient in homemade pastries, raspberry jam is the perfect way to enjoy the taste of summer all year round. From the fields to the factory and finally to your table, the journey of raspberry jam is a testament to the hard work and care that goes into producing every jar. Next time you spread that delicious jam on your toast, you'll know exactly how it got there. If you bite into a scoop of plombier, you'll be hit with flavors so rich, creamy, and smooth that it practically melts on your tongue. This iconic Russian ice cream has been a favorite for generations. Even more impressive, a single factory can produce thousands of these treats in just 1 hour, with every batch made with care and precision. So, how does a simple mix of ingredients turn into such a beloved dessert? But first, a quick look at its origins. Though plombier is now a Russian staple, it actually began in France. In the 19th century, a French confectioner from Plombières-les-Bains created a dessert by blending fruits soaked in cherry liqueur with eggs and cream, then freezing it. This delightful treat eventually made its way to Russia, where it evolved into the plombier that we know today. In Russia, during the Soviet era, plombier became a must-have dessert. The Soviet government set strict standards, known as GOST, requiring plombier to be made with high fat content and no artificial additives. These rules ensured that every scoop was rich, creamy, and full of flavor, helping plombier become one of the country's most cherished treats. The process of making plombier starts with gathering the best ingredients. The main components include fresh milk, cream, sugar, eggs, and sometimes condensed milk. Factories typically source their milk and cream from local dairies that focus on quality and sustainability. The cream's high-fat content is crucial because it gives plombier its rich and creamy texture. Sugar and condensed milk are added to sweeten the mixture and make it smooth, while eggs act as a natural emulsifier, helping to blend everything into a silky mix. Once these top-quality ingredients are selected, they are transported to the factory where the magic happens. The first step in the factory is mixing. Large industrial mixers are used to combine all the ingredients into a smooth, uniform liquid. This step is crucial because any inconsistency in mixing could lead to uneven texture or flavor in the final product. Once all the ingredients are mixed together, the next step is pasteurization. This means heating the mixture to about 85 degrees Celsius to kill any harmful bacteria. Pasteurization is really important because it makes sure the ice cream is safe to eat and helps the flavors blend well. But it's a delicate process. If the mixture gets too hot, it can change the flavor. If it's not hot enough, harmful bacteria might survive. After pasteurization, the mixture goes through homogenization. which is the key to making plombier so creamy. Homogenization is where fat molecules are broken down into tiny droplets and spread evenly throughout the mixture. This is done using a machine that applies high pressure to the mix. By doing this, the fat stays evenly mixed in, so the ice cream has a smooth texture with no lumps. If this step isn't done right, the ice cream could end up oily or uneven, which wouldn't taste as good. Once the mixture is homogenized, it's moved to the aging tanks, where it rests and thickens for several hours, usually between 4 to 12 hours. Aging is important because it lets the flavors fully develop and the texture get smoother. During this time, the proteins and fats in the mix work together to make the ice cream creamier. The tanks are kept cool, around 4 degrees Celsius, so the mixture thickens slowly without freezing. This aging process also helps make sure the ice cream will hold up well during freezing. It's a simple step, but it's key to giving plombier its rich, dense texture that people love. After the mixture has aged, it's time for freezing and churning. This is where plombier really starts to take shape. The aged mixture is put into a continuous freezer, a machine that churns and freezes the ice cream at the same time. Churning is important because it adds air to the mixture, which affects how smooth and dense the final product is. For plombier, only a small amount of air is added, which gives it a dense and rich texture. As the ice cream churns, it also freezes. But because it's being stirred constantly, it stays smooth and creamy without forming large ice crystals. The continuous freezer quickly brings the ice cream's temperature down, usually to below -20 degrees Celsius. This rapid freezing is essential to keep the ice cream's smooth texture and prevent any graininess. By the end of this process, the plombier has taken on its final form, but it's not quite ready to eat just yet. Now that the plombier is perfectly frozen and churned, the next step is shaping and filling. Depending on the final product, whether it's a tub, cone, or bar, the ice cream is carefully shaped and packaged. If the plombier is destined to become ice cream bars, the mixture is poured into molds to take shape and then hardened further. For tubs or cones, precise filling machines dispense just the right amount of ice cream into each container. This part of the process is highly automated to ensure everything is done with accuracy and cleanliness. The machines are designed to be incredibly precise, making sure every package has the correct amount of ice cream with no waste. Once filled, the ice cream is quickly sent to a blast freezer to get the final hardening touch. The blast freezer works by blowing super cold air at high speeds over the ice cream, making sure it freezes evenly and quickly. Once a plombier has hardened, it's ready for packaging. The packaging process is also fully automated to make sure it's done efficiently and hygienically. The ice cream is moved along conveyor belts, going through various stages of packaging. For bars, this might mean wrapping them in paper or foil. For tubs, the ice cream is placed in containers, which are then sealed with airtight lids. The packaging is designed to keep the ice cream fresh and protect it during transport. Sealed packages are important because they prevent freezer burn, which can ruin the texture and flavor of the ice cream. Throughout the entire production process, strict quality control measures are in place. At different points along the production line, there are inspection stations to check for any defects or inconsistencies. Advanced technology like X-ray machines and spectroscopy is used to spot any contaminants or irregularities that might not be visible to the naked eye. Each batch is also sampled and tested for texture, flavor, and consistency to make sure it meets the high standards expected of plombier. Only after passing these tests does the ice cream move on to storage and distribution. Once packaged, the plombier ice cream is stored in cold storage rooms, where the temperature is carefully controlled to keep the ice cream in perfect condition until it's ready to be shipped. These storage rooms are kept at around -25 degrees Celsius to ensure the ice cream remains frozen and fresh. Finally, the ice cream is loaded onto refrigerated trucks for distribution. These trucks are specially designed to maintain the low temperatures needed to keep the ice cream frozen during transport. Transporting frozen goods is a complex task, and these trucks are equipped with GPS and temperature monitors to make sure the ice cream arrives at its destination in the best possible condition. And there you have it, the fascinating journey of how plombier, one of Russia's most beloved ice creams, is made in a factory. From selecting the best ingredients to the careful processes of mixing, pasteurizing, homogenizing, and freezing, every step is designed to create a rich, creamy, and utterly delicious product. The history of plombier is as rich as the ice cream itself, evolving from a French dessert into a Russian classic that's loved by generations. The production process blends tradition with modern technology, ensuring that each batch of plombier meets the highest quality standards. Whether it's in a cone, a tub, or an ice cream bar, plombier is more than just a dessert. It's a taste of history and a testament to the art of ice cream making. If you found this dive into ice cream production as fascinating as we did, click on the next video for more behind-the-scenes looks at how your favorite products are made.